You caught my attention at a recent post over at SEO Signals, where Stephen put together a Pick My Brain thing that he normally does. And what caught my attention was the fact that you niche down, you specialize. You're not a generalist, you're a specialist.
Hmm.
You niche down into one sector, and it seems to me that you've had a tremendous amount of value or success rather doing that. That's why I wanted to get in touch, because there's been a lot of discussion in the group that I run, Jason,
Hmm.
about niching down. Some people are all for it. Others are like, no, no way, it's not happening.
Hmm.
So I think I figured the best thing to do is to speak to someone that's done it and done it really well and get some feedback.
Yeah, I did it by accident, if I'm being honest. So my story is I've been doing SEO since 2001. I did it, on my own for some of my own websites for about 7 years. Built up a business. I had a wedding directory that I built and sold.
Okay.
And then I moved out to Atlanta, Georgia, in the States here. And I was asked to speak at a conference. And the guy that asked me to speak says, "Hey, it's just a bunch of lawyers. Why don't you just kind of get up there and they're a bunch of DUI lawyers, like people that drink and drive, right?
Right.
And
Okay. Yeah.
he's like, why don't you kind of get up and just kind of show them how you were able to rank #1 on Google for the word wedding favors with one of your old sites? And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So I put together a presentation really quick. And I went down the next day and I delivered the presentation. And when I got off stage, I was very transparent. I'm like, this is exactly how I did this. And these are the links that I built. And these are the
Right.
tools that I use.
Right.
And once I got off stage, about 7 attorneys came up to the stage and they were like, but wow, that was really awesome. Like I'm paying my SEO guy like $7,000 a month and they're not doing any of this stuff. And another guy's like, I'm paying my SEO guy $10,000 a month. They're not doing this stuff either.
Wow. Okay.
And so I ended up, I'm like, here, give me your card, give me your card. And that was kind of the genesis of my first agency. I didn't know that I was going to start an agency when I gave that presentation, but I walked away with like $35,000 per month in reoccurring revenue.
That's amazing. And that was
Mhm.
certainly one of my questions, Jason. Was this a conscious decision? Did you roll out of bed one morning and think, right, I'm going to niche down and focus in on the legal space? But it seems to me that it was, I mean, that's an incredible story. Um,
Accident. Yep.
yeah, and to walk away
Hmm.
with, when they were throwing around those numbers, you must have been thinking, like, surely a light bulb went off, and you must have been thinking, wow, this has got my attention. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had the clients before we even had a proposal, you know what I mean? And so like,
Yeah, right.
so we started the agency and then, I, at that point, you start to build case studies, right? And once you have a good case study, you leverage that case study and then you present that case study to other people that aspire to be
Yeah.
like that case study. And
Just
yeah.
just on case studies, that's something that keeps coming up. And
Hmm.
I hope you don't mind the fact that I just jumped straight into these.
I want you to. Yeah, please,
Okay, because I
please.
didn't
Hmm.
want to. There's been a lot of people throwing that question around in the group, Jason. I don't have a case study. Why would anyone work with me if I'm going to be charging $2,000 or $3,000 a month if I can't show results that I've gotten for someone else? What are
Hmm.
your thoughts around? Because again, a lot of people in the group are asking, a lot of members in the group are asking that question or have concerns around not having case studies. And it seems to me that and I know you mentioned this over at SEO Signals, once you had a solid case study, that must have made a tremendous difference in you gaining momentum. Yes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because once you have that solid case study, that becomes your sales pitch, right? You're not really selling them anything. Like when you get on a next call, all you're doing is showing them what you do,
Right.
really.
Okay.
And and you're very thorough about it, and in most cases, you if you have the passion, if this is not really just a job, another job, right? But if you're really passionate about it and you keep up with it, they can see that, right, in your presentation because you're so proud of the work that you've
Yeah.
done here,
Yeah.
right? And
So,
so I open up every single call and I say, like on every sales call, I say, I am not going to sell you anything. My intention is not to sell you anything today. I'm like, all I want to do is I just want to, share what we've done. And if there's a way we can work together, let's explore that. That's it.
Yeah, that's a great angle. That's the angle that I typically take, especially because I don't know how your sales process works. I have a 2-step sales process where we pre-qualify first.
Mm-hmm.
And if they qualify, then we have them sit in on a presentation, and that's where we walk them through our process.
Got it.
To set things like expectation levels, what you do, what you don't do. So what about for people that don't have case studies, Jason? What can they do to get one? Should they work for free? Should they reduce their rate? Should they do charity work?
Yeah, I don't think you should work for free, but I think to kind of get into a specific niche, heck, I mean, one of the things that I've done is I've built websites as though I was a law firm in the U.S. And then built up enough traffic, and I've created my own case study, right? So maybe you could build like a lead generation website, right? Okay. That generates leads for plumbers or whatever else. And then you're leveraging that same asset as your case study, but you're able to generate revenue and becomes an internal asset.
Yeah, I guess the only concern that I have with that is that I think you got to be really protective of your time and careful that you're not sitting there working on something like that for 12 months and you're not making any money.
That's a fair point. I think, that we started doing that after we had revenue and stuff. But yeah, I think even if you just discount your rates so that, it's kind of like a little bit over break even, but you're building a good case study. Because, as I do, it's not going to happen in a month or two. It's going to take 8-9 months before you really start to gain like real momentum where you've got a proud case study that you can display, right?
Yeah, right. That was one of the questions that I had listed down, Jason. How long did it take for you to gain momentum and be known? And maybe you should have covered this earlier, but just touch on exactly what you're in the legal space. Do you specialize? Are there any? That's a fairly broad industry. Do you specialize in sectors within the legal space or just legal overall?
We do. I mean, for the most part, most of the people, like if you come to the United States, they've got billboards of lawyers all over the place and they're on the TV and radio. Those are mostly like our clientele. A lot of those are our clients, firms that have big budgets. And a lot of these firms really, believe it or not, have not gotten the internet right. And so we come in, and in most cases, we can just fix their website and just in a couple months, see a nice results. But there's other clients that we start from scratch, right? And it takes, over a year before you, even are able to generate one like good lead, right? But you have to manage the expectations of your clients, right? So.
Yeah, expectations is definitely a big one. I got a bunch of questions, as you know, from everyone in the group. I've taken some screenshots, so I might maybe work through some of those. Some of these you've already kind of answered, Jason, because you were quite fortunate to be given. How many times have people asked you for a copy of that presentation?
You know what? There's a video of me making that present. It's only like a 15-second video, but it's on on YouTube. I'll have to dig it out. Yeah.
I'd be absolutely fascinated to get a copy or see that presentation. But I'm sure it's probably nothing special. How long was it? Do you know? Was it 15 minutes, half an hour?
No, it was a 45-minute presentation. And it really just kind of, it probably, back then, it was probably like, you've got to spam this guest blog. You got to go to this person's blog. Or, what I mean? Like, I can't, it was the old strategies that worked back then. This was before Penguin and Panda, you know what I mean? So much different presentation than I would probably give today.
Right. So one of the questions that I had here, and again, you may have already kind of covered this. How are you getting leads in the beginning? I mean, getting leads is a real problem for everyone, right?
Yeah. So, and you notice if you do any research on me, I have a 1-page website. Right?
I know. I saw that. I saw you post that. I didn't actually take a look, and I thought this this guy's surely joking. $10 million a year, he's got a one-page website. What the hell is going on here?
So sales has not been our problem. I've built a good enough reputation, over the years. I speak at a lot of the conferences, the legal conferences. I've got a pretty
Right.
good name in the industry, and I've built a lot of relationships. And so, I mean, every single day there's somebody that's passing, hey, I was on a call with this attorney. It might be like a chat company that we work with, right?
Right.
And so most of our leads are coming in just naturally, just through our reputation.
Through word of mouth. Okay.
Through word of mouth and our reputation. So we've never have done any marketing, like zero marketing, with the exception of doing conferences and speaking at conferences.
Right. So how long did it take you to get to that point in terms of momentum? Was that 6 months, 12 months, a year and a half?
Well, I got started, remember, so I had one agency that I sold already. And so that also did legal marketing. And then I started over. And so this new agency, which I got started in 2015, which is the agency that we're talking about right now, just I guess because I've been in the space probably for about 12, 13, 14 years in the legal space, that's about how long it took, right? So like back in the day, I was still building a name for myself. I'd have to do a presentation. After you do a presentation, then you're asked to come to a different conference. And so over the years, it just continues to grow and snowball. And then you start to build, really what it is, it's just the relationships that you build, and then the clients that you service. And then those clients are in mastermind groups and they share their experience with you. And next thing you know, it's just completely snowballing and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
So for those that are wanting to niche down, what sort of, I mean, you sound like you're pretty proactive in terms of networking, shaking hands and kissing babies.
Sure. Good way to put it.
I mean, there's going to be a big difference between how long something like that might take, making that sort of effort, as opposed to just maybe cold emailing and so forth. I mean, I guess the overall message and what you're saying is that it's going to take some time to niche down, right, and become known in your space.
It is. I mean, but there's so many easy ways to do that nowadays. I mean, even what you're doing right now, like you have a podcast show. Like if you want to niche down, create a podcast show and then start inviting people on the show just to talk about their experience. That's kind of like a back door, right? So that's one good way to do it. As far as just I was doing that a long time ago. Now you have Loom and you've got Zoom and all these, I was doing some of that stuff, like using a program called Jing, which is still around, to make those screencast videos where I'd basically show them it's me talking and presenting my screen. And it was the most coolest thing. Nobody's ever seen that before, right?
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing that way back, in the late 2000s, I guess. And now everybody does that. But yeah, I'm not a fan of just kind of cold emails, and I don't know if that works. I mean, I know it works for outreach and guest blog posts, and but as far as trying to solicit a lawyer, good luck. Or that's just I don't know if it works. That hasn't been my experience.
Yeah. Something that you just touched on then, Jason, which I think is really important, and this is something that I try and encourage in the group: active discussions. I think just getting the conversation started, even if that means taking, the money and working together out of it, just starting that discussion. I sat in with a cosmetic surgeon yesterday for about an hour and a half and went through a bunch of things, because that's a space that I'm interested in niching down in, and just gave tremendous value. I think just starting the conversation and having that discussion is a great starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you start to learn the vernacular of that industry, and you can speak it, right?
Yeah.
And then you start to know mutual people, and there's connections, and you start to go to the trade shows, the industry trade shows, and you're at the after parties and you're drinking cocktails with different people. I mean, that's really it. A lot of the work, like, believe it or not, when you go to those trade shows, you're at a booth all day long, but the real networking doesn't start until like 8 o'clock at night, right? At the bar, right? So
yeah, no, that's excellent. Okay, a couple of questions here. I'll go through. You're providing legal SEO. Is it globally or within the US only?
Well, we do have some clients in Canada, but for the most part, it is domestically based here in the United States. We work with attorneys from Texas to Florida to California. I mean, all over the United States. Most of them are, like I said, personal injury lawyers. We do work with some criminal defense attorneys as well.
And how have you faced, a few people in the group have asked about competing against yourself. I don't know if you saw that mentioned, but there's a real, I think for some of and this might be true for SEOs in general, there's a scarcity mindset or fear of missing out, when it comes to niching down or potentially competing against yourself. If I get a cosmetic surgeon in Sydney, then I can't work with any other cosmetic surgeons. What are your thoughts on that?
So we took a stance on this because when you're first starting out, you're going to say yes to everything, right? They're like, hey, I'll work with you, but I want to have exclusivity. And like, you don't want to turn that deal, right? Because you work so hard to get it. And so you say yes to it. But there comes a time in your business where you can afford to say no. And that's where we're at right now. We don't do exclusivity anymore. We used to do that. And there's still a couple clients that do have clauses with us that we honor. But moving forward, like, in fact, we were going to turn down a client that was going to pay us $40,000 a month. Yeah, and we were going to tell them no because they wanted exclusivity, and we didn't want to give exclusivity. And the reason why we don't want to give exclusivity is because nothing else is exclusive, right? I don't know where this mindset came in from just Google. Like, AdWords is not exclusive, billboards are not exclusive, TV is not exclusive. So why is the digital marketing exclusive, right? And so what we'll do is we'll take on a client, and if we take on another client, which we don't have, like, it's not like we have 10 clients in one area. Like, we're not that big of a company, you know what I mean? Like, we might have like one or two in a major market. But when we take them on, we set them up, they work with different teams. And so it's a complete experience. There's no like exchange of like proprietary information between the two different teams.
Right. Okay. So that sounds to me like that's how you've managed to get around it, by segmenting different teams so there's no cross communication.
Yeah.
Has that been the main draw card in terms of dealing with any people objecting to not?
Yeah, I guess the people that are going to object, we have to just accept it. Because most of our competitors they have exclusivity, right? And most of the competitors that have exclusivity, like the good competitors that I would actually trust with my own SEO, they're locked up in most of the major markets, right? And so because they're locked up in most of the major markets, there's really not a lot of good choices left, right? So it could be like a competitive advantage that we are not exclusive, right? So that's one way to look at it, but that's not how we look at it. I think we're really confident in our abilities, and certain clients are going to have bigger budgets, and the other problem too is there's a liability by having exclusivity, right? Because we might do a campaign for one client in Miami, Florida, right? And they're ranking #1 on Google for Miami car accident lawyer. But one of our other clients, built up a website that's so authoritative that their website started to rank in Miami too, right? I mean, now, is it a breach of contract because one of our other clients has built up a page that's nationally, that might be an FAQ that's ranking? We've came into those situations where one of our clients' websites became so authoritative, it started to rank nationally for the word car accident lawyer, right? And so, so there's some liability concerns there too. And yeah.
What sort of issues have you had to deal with when it comes to exclusivity? Have you had much pushback, or have you?
No, not really. Uh,
And how
I
often do you get
mean,
asked that question, Jason, when you're doing your sales presentations? You get people saying, "Look, we're not interested in working together if you're going to take on 5 other
yeah,
lawyers that are 5 minutes down the road."
yeah, it comes up often.
Yeah,
But we look them in the eye and we just say, I'm sorry, we don't offer any type of exclusivity. And if we were going to do exclusivity, like it's going to be like,
yeah, four
com-
times more expensive.
exactly, right?
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? So,
I like.
that's
No,
just
sorry.
our way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I like your thoughts around the billboards, AdWords, Facebook ads. None of that is exclusive.
No, no, it's not.
So I totally get you on that one, and yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Mhm.
All right, Josh asks, since we've been talking about niching down, how about asking Jason the process of choosing a niche and establishing yourself as an expert in that niche?
Yeah. So for me, again, it just kind of happened by accident, right? So I didn't choose it, but I just happened to stumble upon a great niche, right? And it's because there's a lot of margin in the services that our clients do. Lawyers go to school to win, right? They despise the competition. Most of the lawyers, I'd say this even if my clients were on the call with me, but they do have decent egos, right? And they like to see themselves on TV and stuff like that. And so, it's kind of like the perfect, service category that we've kind of accidentally fallen into here. And then once you're able to master that, like you start to reverse engineer link strategies, and the links that work, and the content that works, and then it's just a matter of replicating the same process in a different city for a different client,
Yeah,
right? And you continue to
yeah,
do it over and over again. But as far as selecting one, yeah, you definitely want something that has high. Well, in this case, is a very competitive market. I could have chosen a lot easier markets to kind of penetrate. But you probably want something that has decent margin, and people have there's a difference between people, you know, thinking that a marketing expense is more than their house payment, right? There's certain industries
yeah,
where it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
whoa, hold on a second, you're asking for like more than my car
yeah,
payment for
yeah,
this, right? And then there's a mindset of like people, like industries where, hey, we're just going to allocate, this is our marketing budget, right? You want to try to find something where it's not that first mindset, but it's more
yeah.
of the second mindset.
No, excellent points, and I totally agree. Two things that came to mind, and while you were touching on that point, um, three key things that I talk about in the group about choosing a niche. The economics need to make sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's exactly what you were just touching on there. And the numbers need to make sense. There's no point trying to sell someone, $3,000 a month SEO if they're selling $4 pot plants. It's just not
Exactly.
going to work.
Yeah.
The other thing is it needs to be um, SEO needs to be a suitable marketing strategy, because I know there are people that are trying, they're trying to sell SEO everywhere to everyone. And I've been to the local fish and chip shop. I'm not sure what you
Mm-hmm.
guys call them there, but
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I get in there like, oh, someone's calling me about SEO. Should I do it? I'm like, you're selling fish and chips here. Like, you don't, you don't need to be, you don't need to be signing up for SEO. So the
Yeah.
economics need to make sense. SEO needs to be a practical marketing channel or
Yeah.
suitable marketing strategy. And the other point that comes up a lot in the group, and this is one that I definitely agree with, it needs to be a space that where you actually enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that, Jason?
Absolutely, because you're going to be immersed in conversations with people, and that's all they're going to be talking about. And so, yeah, you want to make sure that you find something that you can at least live with. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've worked, for whatever reason, I've worked with a lot of pest control companies, and I
Mm-hmm.
had a conversation with Byron in the group, and he suggested, dude, like, pest control backwards. Why don't you just niche down? I I'm sick and tired of talking about pest control and termites. I've been doing it for like 5 years straight because I had 3 clients all at the same time. I
Yeah.
just don't want to go there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But it can be very rewarding. I mean, like we had one client that called me up. I was out at my pool. Phone rang. It was an attorney, one of my clients. He's like, Jason, hey. I'm like, what's up? Because that case we've been working, and he's been working for a couple months. And this was one that was generated from an SEO lead. Turned into a $25 million settlement, right?
Wow.
From one SEO lead, right? So like that's the thing with these the niche that I'm in is that it could be very very profitable. And the thing about like legal, I guess in any niche, I guess if you look at it, so like the cost per acquisition, right, in the early stages, it starts out like very high, right? So the cost per acquisition is very high. But over time, the content that you wrote 3 months ago is still generating phone calls and leads today, right? And eventually,
right.
like over time, like 5 years down the road, if you stick to it, like the cost of acquisition, what used to be, $1,000 to acquire a new client is now $50 to acquire a new client, right? So
yeah, that cost per acquisition that came up in the group recently. One of the members, Reese, was talking about CPA for SEO, and I was like, oh, I haven't really thought about CPA in terms of organic or search traffic before, and I thought that was a fascinating way of thinking about it. And it's certainly true. I've picked up clients that are getting 20, 30 customer inquiries a month, and then after 18 months, 2 years, they're getting 400 a month.
Yeah,
and they're still getting 400 a month. So that's CPA, like you said, and it only means something if they play the long game. It's about they've got to play the long game. There's people that call me and say, "Oh, we only want to do 3 months of SEO," which for me is 45 hours. Yeah. I just don't take them on because you're only just going to be starting to paddle, and they want to pull up.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster for everyone. Yeah.
Something that you mentioned just then, Jason, about reverse engineering and knowing and learning with each campaign. I'm guessing that would be, what some of the benefits of niching down would be, especially when you're looking at the same types of websites constantly. You're doing legal over and over and over. You're learning and improving with each and every campaign that comes through. And that process is being compounded and improved more and more over time. Would you agree?
1000%. And the beautiful thing about it is I've got access to so much data points.
Right.
So I know the keywords that convert, right? Because there might be an attorney that's spending $200,000 per month on pay-per-click. So when I'm dealing with another client, we know from experience, like, okay, well, these are the keywords that convert. Now, granted, it's a different city, right? And so we build out the content strategy and we're leveraging. And so we have access to so much data, from our outreach to our link building to our content strategy. We have literally a proven formula.
That's tremendously advantageous. I know I sat in on Kat Howell's training. I don't know if you know of Kat Howell. She does Facebook.
I've heard. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she said something in one of her modules. She said, and this is what really steered me towards niching down. I was never a fan of it. It's probably over the last 12 months that I've started moving in this direction, and I can certainly see the benefits. She said something in one of her videos that really resonated with me. She said, learning curves cost time and money. And I thought, fuck, that makes so much sense, because you pick up someone, that sells Lego on the internet. I got to learn about Lego. Then you're working with someone that sells trampolines. Fuck, I got to learn about trampolines. And each time you're picking up a new campaign, you're starting from zero. So it takes, like you said, time is money. Mm-hmm. That is for sure. Right, dude. Next question from Dan. Dan asks, I'd like to ask Jason about agency structure, when and who to hire first, and how to manage the growth. That's kind of broad, but.
Yeah, so for me, it started out as me, and then when I moved out here in 2015 to California, I brought on a developer because I'm not a developer, and then I brought on a content writer, and so it was me and them, and then that one case study turned into more cases, and so I have an executive coach. His name is Cameron Harold, and so one of the things that Cameron taught me, that in business there's a rule, and it's the 1 in 3 rule, right? So the strategies that you do for one person will not work when you have 3 people, right? The systems and processes. And then the same goes true for 10 people and then 30 people. So every time you hit a 1 or a 3, your systems and processes have to change. And so right now we went from 30 people, we're at over 100 full-time people now that work for us. And so our systems and processes are changing. And so what happens in business is initially you're just trying to solve macro problems. It's like, I need a developer and I need a content writer, right? But over the course of time, now our content team has editors and writers, and we have QA people, and there's more micro people now that you have to build out. We have content strategists, right? And so it continues to evolve, but that's kind of my story. As I started out with a developer and a content writer, and then, from there continued to evolve. Now I probably have, I've got a CFO, I've got a full-time, somebody in our accounting department. We've got HR. We just brought in somebody that actually is going to build out curriculum for our, to train our team.
Right.
So like really super, super micro now.
Yeah, I'm implementing a client portal for my clients. They come on board, they get a dashboard they log into, and they get access. It centralizes everything.
Nice.
And I was looking at that and I thought, you know what? Fuck, why don't I implement a staff portal? So for training videos, SOPs, the whole lot. I get someone that comes on board to go, here's your login, jump in, watch the training. That way you're not repeating yourself. Okay, click here, go here. Now you got to go, here's the spreadsheet on Google Drive.
Yeah.
I think.
Organized.
Yeah, yeah. So something, I think a staff portal, something like that.
And there is software, like there's a software called Trainual. There's a couple of like software that does that. Mm-hmm.
I think for me, my first hire was a web guy and then a content person.
So same story as me. Yeah, there
really?
You go.
Okay, yeah, because I inherited a site. It was just a mess, and I thought, fuck, I've got it. And the guy was saying, oh, we need to fix this here, and because he knew there were problems. And I thought, fuck, I need to find a web guy. I think that if I had my time over again, I would have hired sooner. Is that a mistake that you made? Because I think a lot of people, when they first start out doing SEO, they try and do everything themselves. And I know I certainly did.
That's a huge lesson. So here's a lesson I learned back in 2017. So 2017, I had a phenomenal year. Like we just broke I made like $1 million in profit, right? But I was working like 12, 13-hour days every day, and I was doing everything. I was the account manager, and then I would do payroll, and then I was doing strategy. And so I'm doing all this stuff, and at the end of the year, right, Uncle Sam comes along, and he's like, hey, we want our 35%. And so I had to write a huge check to the government, right? And so after, I'm like, at the end, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell was all that hard work for? I could have taken that money and hired smart people that are probably more capable than I am at HR and strategy. And so in 2018, I'm like, screw this. This is the year that we're hiring people that are smarter than me, and I'm kind of getting out of the way. So that was a lesson learned. Yeah, man. Like there's people that are better than you at different tasks, and don't be afraid to do that, to hire people.
Yeah, I think it's really important though. And I said this on a recent video with one of the other members. I think there's some value in being in the trenches and doing some of the work yourself initially, so that you can learn the process and build and refine that process before you can then hand it over to someone else.
Absolutely. And so 2015 is when I started this agency. And so it took me 2 years of being in the trenches before I decided to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, 3 years.
I think that could be a dangerous thing to do. I'm going to hire someone, and then they rock up for work. What the fuck do I do? I don't know. Just go and do something. Yeah, I think.
You know what? It's so crazy that now we're at a position where there's so much high-level managers that are like brilliant, and the business is growing without me now. Like that's the most beautiful thing about this is like. So here's a story. I actually every all week long I'm on calls and I'm taking down notes, and right, you probably do the same thing. You scribble something here, you scribble something there, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the week, you have all of these scribbles. And what I do is I
got plenty of
organize.
scribbles. I got pages of everywhere.
Yeah. So at the end of the week, like what I do is I organize everything into action items, right? These are all my action items, right? And so this thing was 15 pages and growing, like probably like 6 months ago. 15 pages. And it's because I was not a fan of delegating things. I didn't have the right people to delegate things to, right? But now this is 3 pages long, and actually, last month was the best month that we've had ever in our history of our agency, financially speaking. So the lesson here is the less that I have to do, the faster our company grows.
Yeah, I found this might be true for you as well, Jason. Sometimes you'll hire someone and they'll far exceed your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I hired someone, they come on board like, no, John, there's a better way to do this. I'm like, holy fuck. Wow, actually, I learned something here. This is amazing.
That's what you want.
And I think, man, because it's real easy to have that mindset. You know, there's a lot of people, especially freelancers, I find that think, oh, you know, and it's that whole Robert Kiyosaki thing. Oh, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's a really dangerous mindset to have.
Yeah, no. I mean, in the early stages, yeah, that's kind of how most businesses, and the problem is that, when you're just starting out and you're bootstrapping a business, you can't afford to hire the high level people. So instead you're hiring like interns and people right out of high school, and you're having to train them. So you're spending more time training them than you are kind of fulfilling your services. And that's a recipe. That's why most small businesses go out of business, is because you have the wrong people doing the wrong things.
Yeah. I talk about, I don't know if you've watched the show, The Profit with Marcus Lemonis. He talks about the 3 Ps, people, process, and product.
Yes.
It's a fascinating show. You can have a great product and fantastic process. You got the wrong people, then you're fucked. And
That's
the
right.
same is true for, you could have great people, great process, but nobody wants your product.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that came to mind when you were speaking then is, in holding up your list, Jason, is strengths and weaknesses. I suck at the admin side of stuff. I don't want to do that. So it's something that I stay away from. I much prefer to interact with my clients and handle sales calls and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to know, would you agree that there are things that, I mean, it's what that's saying, you can't teach a fish to ride a bicycle, right? So
that's right.
And I've tried taking my content girl one time and getting her to do off-page optimization. It was a fucking disaster. So I think slotting people in to their most appropriate spots where they're really strong. Is that what you found?
No, that's completely, and sometimes like after you bring somebody on, you see that, maybe like this isn't the best slot for them. And you see that they're more analytical, and you move them into the analytics department and they do better there. Right. So sometimes it's the opposite too, but absolutely. Yeah. Like, like my people will write long emails, right? Like paragraphs and that's not my style. Like, I just want to hop on a quick video and let's talk this through, right? So everybody's got different styles, different skill sets. And you just kind of have to make sure they match up with the most suitable job that's right for them.
Right, dude. Next question. Lisa asked, does Jason have a lead funnel? Does he use LinkedIn? What has been the most successful way of getting leads? We kind of already touched on that, but
yes, I don't. So I do have a brain trust that I built. It's called Jason Hennessy's Legal Marketing Brain Trust, where it's like invite only, and I invite prospects that we speak to, and I'll create educational videos that are very specific about legal. If there's a Google update, I'll talk about it in there, and so that's a good funnel for us. There's probably about 300 members and growing.
Is that a Facebook thing, Jason?
That's a Facebook group. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a Facebook group. But most of our business, again, it comes in by way of, just people that know us in the industry, or some of our clients that introduce us to new clients.
One quick question. What's a mistake that you see a lot of people making when they do decide to niche down? They don't give it enough time. They bounce around. Are they too hard to get to, or I mean, what's some of the biggest mistakes you see for people that are choosing to niche down?
Well, I can speak from experience because we do see, we see agencies that come in and out of our particular niche. And a lot of times, your reputation is key, right? And so if you're at a conference and you're selling stuff that, the churn and burn strategy is not going to work forever, where you kind of bring in a client, you get them to agree to a year-month contract and you don't deliver as promised. And next thing you know, you keep burning people over and over again, right? And, that's just not good. And I see that a lot. The other thing is just, undercharging. If it's going to take $5,000 to actually get the job done per month, if don't take the job for 2,500, like walk away, right? Because you're mismanaging their expectations and you're going to damage your reputation, right? A lot of times people they can't say no, right? It's like, oh, $5,000 is a lot, right? Yeah. And it's like, I was thinking more like 2,500, and you're like, okay, we'll try it out for 2,500, but you're armed with half the ammunition that you need to fight the battle, and it's not enough.
Yeah, reputation, I can understand that, especially if you're niching down, because they all know each other, right?
Oh yeah.
There's a network. Yeah. They all know each other, just like we do as SEOs. We all sort of know of each other. If we don't,
we sure do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So reputation, sure, and I think the other point that you made there was, I think a lot of people have a fear of asking for money.
I think so.
Yeah. I'm past that now, but I certainly had that problem when I first started. I was like, oh, $1,000. Like, that sounds like such a lot of money. And I just go for it. Ask for it. Wow, they didn't hesitate. 1,000. Okay, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 5,000.
Yep. That's right.
Zaf asked, you mentioned earlier in the post that leverage one really good case study. If you were to go back and start with zero, with one quality case study behind you, what would your client acquisition strategy, organic or paid? So I guess what he's asking is if you started over and you didn't have a case study, how would you go about getting started?
So if I had to start over and I didn't have a case study, so I think what I would do, and this is exactly what I did. I actually I wrote a book. It was it wasn't like a real published book, but it's like a thin book that I have a copy of. And I actually wrote a letter, and I put it in the mail to every single, like the physical mail. And it says, "Hi, my name. You don't know me, but I know a lot about you. I've been looking at your website and comparing you to some of your competitors." Right. And and then I show, here's where you stand up, and I look at like SEMrush, the number of keywords that they rank for, and their SEMrush value, their traffic cost, and they'll say these are where your competitors are, right? If you'd like to learn why your competitors are have so much more market share from a digital marketing perspective, I'd love to talk. And then there's my book that they also read. And so I sent that out to 100 different law firms in one market, and I ended up getting 7 meetings from doing that. And then it was a matter of me choosing who I wanted to work with. Right. So I would, to be honest, I'm telling you to use an offline strategy to get online business.
Yeah, that one's come up a few times in the group, lumping mail. It can be a tricky one. Would you say it's a numbers game? Is it more about volume, do you think, Jason, or is it just about making sure that you've got a really solid offer?
You need to both. I mean, like if you're just sending a postcard, that's not going to work, right? I mean, that stuff. But if you send something that they have to open, it comes by way of FedEx, they have to sign for it, whatever. I mean, now you've got their attention, right? And so, and that's the thing too, is email, sending emails, that's just going to get buried, right? But this is something that they physically have to open, right? The marketing director of whatever, so that's a good way. People like receiving mail, you look forward to that, when you get the Amazon package or whatnot.
It's interesting that you gave that answer, because it was Zaf in the group was sending out letters. I'm not sure exactly what he was including in his letters, but I know that he sent a tremendous amount of letters. Mm-hmm. I don't think he closed anyone there, but I'm not sure. I don't think he was niching down back then. Mm-hmm. So perhaps that might have influenced the outcome.
Yeah.
Question from Phil. I assume you're not a lawyer in the way that I'm not an accountant. He's focusing on accountants. Do you hire actual lawyers to check things like copy? Do you have a legal a specialized copywriter? Because I'm guessing in your space it would be it's sensitive information, right? It needs to be accurate.
Yeah. So yeah, because you could somebody could lose their like law license if you say things that are inaccurate, right? And so the answer to that question is no. We don't have lawyers. We actually write copy because a lot of people think that when you're working with a lawyer, you need a lawyer to write content, but that's not the case because the people that are reading the content are not lawyers. Right? The people that are reading the content are reading it from like an 8th grade reading level. And so we have to write in the words, instead of using large words and legalese, we write, and we know over the years what we can and cannot say. Like lawyers can't say that they're the best, and they cannot say like, we will win your case. We have to use words like we may win your case, right? And so you can't use absolutes. And so over the years, that's why when you niche down, you start to know the rules of engagement, right? But every piece of content that we write gets reviewed by the client or some of their support staff. Right. Yeah. They review it. And we've been doing this so long that most of it just kind of gets thrown like, okay, that looks great, publish it. But early on, it was like, oh, we can't say this or we can't say that. And over the years, you start to learn what you can and cannot say.
It was what you mentioned at the beginning of the call, that the terminology, the types of language that your clients use. Yeah. And I think one thing that we talk about a lot in the group is you've got to know who your target audience is, who you're actually speaking to. I think if you're not clear about that, and that would be true for you, you would know very well now exactly who your target audience is and who you're speaking to.
That's right.
Phil has another question here. What any tips? What's he got here? Any tips on finding remote staff?
So that's one of the things about our business is we're 100% remote. So we have 105 people full time that are remote. And when I had my old agency, like we had a beautiful office and, it was on the 28th floor. And the problem with that is we have to recruit from a 10-mile radius of this beautiful office. And as well as I do in the SEO space, good luck finding like talent that lives 10 miles, right, from that office. So I decided to do the remote thing, and we've been using Zoom before Zoom was cool. And, we recruit, believe it or not, like most of our recruits have been hand selected. Like we'll recruit somebody and they're like, oh my God, I used to work with this one person and he was just an analytics guru. We should maybe see if we can get him. And so we interview him, and then that, like a lot of that kind of stuff, just kind of comes together like a puzzle. But there are certain people that we run ads for, whether it be on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatnot.
Right. And I don't know if you found this to be true, but I know that once you hire team members, they often know other people.
That's right.
Bring them in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've only got a couple more questions here, Jason, because I know you probably need to. But it's probably dinner time there, right?
It's all right. Yeah, it's 6:45.
Okay. Brett's a great guy. He did my private coaching. He runs a small digital marketing agency. Brett has a number of questions here. I'll try and pick out the best ones.
Yeah, let's go for it.
What has been the 3 biggest factors behind your phenomenal growth?
3 biggest factors. Definitely hiring, hiring the right people. That's one, and not being afraid to pay them what they demand. Yeah. Because I could have found cheaper people to do it, maybe the same job, but I think I would have been disappointed. So, finding the right people and paying them, the right amount of money to do their job. That was number 1. B, recognizing that me personally, that I couldn't do everything, and to stop giving, to stop being a control freak, right? Like you said, the mindset of if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. Like every business owner has that. but sometimes there's people that are better at different things than you are, and you have to accept that. So that's number two. And then the biggest piece this year was I'm an SEO that has turned into a CEO, right? But I don't consider myself a good CEO. And so when you're not good at something, what do? You get a coach. And it's interesting that the guy that asked this question took your program, right? And he was somebody that was seeking help from somebody that has done it before. And so my executive coach, again, his name is Cameron Harold, he has grown a business from like $2 million to $120 million. So he, over the past year, has been showing us all the shortcuts of the mistakes that he's made over the years, so that we don't have to learn from those same mistakes.
Yeah. I had someone that I worked with about 10 years ago now, James Schramko. I'm not sure if you've heard of him.
I know James very well. He's a friend.
Okay. Yeah, he said something to me that I've carried with me since. He said, if I ran through a live minefield and made it safely to the other side, you'd want to know exactly where I stepped. And
yes.
I love that saying, because I've run through that minefield 100 times over and lost limbs and been.
I sure have.
So
James is a good guy. He actually started out as a car dealership. Like he was like a salesman in a car dealership. Yeah. Mercedes.
Mercedes-Benz. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's got a couple more questions here. Some of my members have really pushed their luck. They've added in about 10 questions. So,
good.
What's your average monthly SEO retainer, and do you offer other services besides SEO? And if so, what are they?
Yeah. So for the first 4 years, we were just strictly an organic SEO shop. And then I got asked to go to Portugal last year to be at the SEMrush Summer Jam, which is like an event. SEMrush actually pays for all the expenses, and we go out there and you're hanging out with marketers from all over the world. And that's where I met Nava Hopkins, who's our director of paid media. She was there as a US ambassador on the page side. And so I was able to kind of meet her and court her, and eventually she came over to work with us. And so now she's building and growing our paid division of our company. But as far as like monthly retainer, I'd say average is about like 12 grand a month. You know, it ranges from like 7,500, and I've got people that pay north of $100,000 a month.
Wow. So. Okay. Yeah. That's a big responsibility. Brett has another question here about retention. How do you keep clients sticky? I know a lot of my clients, I don't know about you, Jason, but a lot of my clients stick around for years, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. I think by the time they get to us, a lot of times they've dealt with a lot of those other charlatans that I've talked about that showed up and, took money and then kind of like disappeared and don't show their face again at the conferences. So they've been jaded and burnt over and over again. So by the time they get to us, we're a very honest and ethical company. We have calls every 2 weeks with them like this that you screen share. And so we're not perfect, right? I think the thing that we do is we know what we do. Sometimes that we implement things incorrectly. So like we know the strategy, but sometimes it might have got implemented incorrectly, right? What about the page speed? Oh my God, what happened? So over time, I think our strategy, has worked, and we work on a month-to-month retainer too. So like if somebody wants to get out, they can easily get out.
Okay, that's interesting. I do the same. I don't lock people. I don't lock anyone into contracts. I just give them that freedom and flexibility of paying month to month.
And I tell them that. Yeah, I tell them, hey, listen, we're working month to month. If this doesn't work, I don't want to hold you to a long-term contract. It's not fair for you. It's not fair for me. Yeah. I said, if we're not delivering what we're saying, we deserve to be fired.
That's really nice to hear that, because I've always taken that approach. I think it's the right thing to do. I've picked up the phone too many times here and had business owners saying, John, we're stuck with someone. We got another 8 months. It's just horrible. How do we get out? I think that's just an horrible place to be. So it's really interesting. It's fascinating that you do the same, Jason. And now I know if anyone throws that at me and says, no, you got to lock people into 12 months, I'm going to say, go and talk to Jason. That's good, man. What's been your biggest challenge? Brett asked, this is his last question. He's got two. What's been your biggest challenge along the way? And if you could go back in time, what would you do differently? I think we kind of already touched on that one.
Let's see here. The biggest challenge along the way. Believe it or not, our biggest challenge was growing too fast. Where the sales was basically slowing down the fulfillment. And so we were at a point where we didn't have enough, cooks in the kitchen and the restaurant was full, right?
Yeah.
Where we have people have tasted our steak and they know it's awesome and they come in and there's so many two chefs that can't make enough food. So that's been our thing. And so that's why we're learning from that and we're building better standard operating procedures. And we've got somebody that's coming in that's building curriculum to teach, the employees how to do things. And we're building better systems and processes. And we're doing a lot of automation, like a ton of automation. So that, I think that's our, but you learn from those challenges, right? And that's kind of what makes the business grow, is by recognizing it as a challenge and then fixing it, and then just being better than you were yesterday.
That's one thing I've learned, Jason, is that every now and then you'll go back to your processes and make adjustments and think, right, I've nailed it, it's perfect, and then 3 weeks later, go, fuck. So you're constantly going back, refining my processes, and you learn with each campaign. You'll get a client that does something that you hadn't anticipated. Think, fuck, I don't want that problem again. So you have to. So are you still finding that you're still, even now after all these years, going back and refining your processes
all the time? And in fact, I'll get like I said, it's I run an agency. It's a successful agency, but every agency has its problems. Like just the other day, I was on a call with a client that was complaining about certain things, right? And I love that. Like I love it when I hate it that the client is complaining to me, but I love that I can learn from what they're saying. And then go back and fix the problem. Because if one client's complaining about this, there's probably a lot of other clients that might be agitated about this that are not voicing it.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather the clients voice that to me so we can go and address it and fix it so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I did Sam Ovens, I did his training, and he often talks about being in that feedback loop. Right? And specializing in particular, you get that feedback, you improve, and around you go, and over time you get to a point where you've got your processes refined really, really well. Phil's asking a question here that it doesn't really, I kind of cover that in my training. Getting content and information from companies, that can be a real pain point for a lot of people. I don't know what you do, Jason, but I do a lot of Q&A sessions. So I jump on with my clients. And we cover certain topics, and I record the conversation, then have it transcribed, and then have my team take that transcription and rewrite it into content.
That's a brilliant strategy. Yeah, I mean that's amazing. Yeah, if the client has time to do that, absolutely, it's coming right from their mouth, putting it to paper, editing it. And you might have 3 pages from an hour-long interview, right? I love that strategy.
Yeah, 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes can have 1,500-word blog post.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do those Q&A sessions once a month, so we bang out 4 or 5. But what have you done in terms of solving that problem?
So we actually have we've got a sister company that's based in Fort Lauderdale that writes all of our content. And so we do a lot of content creation, like in Los Angeles, if we're going to be doing stuff for a criminal defense lawyer. Not only will we build a Los Angeles criminal defense lawyer page, but we'll build a Malibu criminal defense lawyer and a Beverly Hills criminal defense lawyer, right? Because what happens is as people are doing searches,
they're surrounding areas, I'm guessing?
Yeah, absolutely. So as people are doing searches, Google recognizes the IP address way down at the bottom. And so if somebody just does a search for DUI lawyer, but they do it for Malibu, our Malibu page will rank. If somebody does a DUI search, right? So from Beverly Hills, our page will show up. So.
Right. Okay. Ian has a couple of questions here. What Was the decision to dig into the legal space related to life circumstances? I know that's not true. Were you hands-on at the start? We've kind of already covered that. What are three top pieces of advice you would give someone who is looking to enter into the legal SEO space? It's interesting. I asked a question in your Pick Your Brain. I had someone say to me about probably 8 years ago, stay right away from legal SEO, because if you're going to end up in court and have legal problems, or someone's going to tear your contract apart, it will be a it will be a lawyer. It will be a lawyer, and that scared me to death. And I thought, fuck, I'm not working with lawyers.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I've never really had any type of situation like that where I've gotten sued or, or taken to court or anything, or threatened. And I think it's just because I'm a very honest and I've got a lot of integrity. And when we mess up, we let the client know that. And so, I think there's a great deal of respect on both sides of the equation. So I'd say three things to consider if you're going to enter this space. You better know your stuff, right? Because legal is one of the most competitive spaces in SEO in general, whether it's, in the United States or wherever. It's very competitive. And so you better know your stuff, because you're competing with the big boys. B, you can't be afraid to ask for money in this vertical, because there's no way you're going to be able to compete in a very large market like New York for like $5,000 per month, right? So that's the second piece of advice. And I'd say the third piece of advice is, you have to be really good at just kind of like networking. I mean, that's really how I was able to build my business, is doing a lot of in-person, speaking on stage, right? That's a big part of our growth, where you get a case study and you present the case study on stage. So, you can't be fearful. You can't be, if you're shy and you're introverted, sometimes you have to kind of come out of your shell a little bit, and create videos or speak on stage or go out to the bar after the conference and start to network with people. That's a large driver of potential leads.
That doesn't necessarily mean, for the people that are shy, that doesn't mean that they have to get on stage. They can always hire someone.
That's true.
And jump on stage.
It should be part of your strategy. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I know a lot of people aren't that way inclined. They're not extroverts, and they don't have that confidence to step on stage or host a presentation.
There you go.
So again, it's really easy, isn't it, to get into, I've got to do this. This is my responsibility. It's not. You can always find someone that's good at that and slot them in.
There you go.
I have a good friend that runs an SEO agency in Sydney, and they do a lot of live events, workshops, speaking from stage, and it's always, I think, from what I know, it's always someone else that does
that side of it.
He's always up the back.
Yeah.
He's up the back swiping credit cards.
Gotta love that.
Handing out tea and coffee. All right, I think I've got about 3 or 4 more questions, Jason, and then I'll let you go.
Cool.
Because it sounds like your dog's getting upset in the background there.
Yeah, it's late here. My kids are all running around, so sorry about that.
You had a fire. I saw on Instagram. You had a fire nearby.
Actually, there's fires all over the place here right now. And so it's at a point where it's not like where we have to kind of get, move to a different area or anything. But yeah, it gets pretty bad over here.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm just about 30 minutes outside of like Hollywood, in an area called Santa Clarita.
Right. Okay. I know there's a lot of Australian firefighters over there at the moment. I'm not exactly sure.
They probably are.
But I mean, we know all about fires.
Yeah, you do. Part of the 2020 story. Yeah.
God, it was horrible. George Coker. This guy does really well. I'm a big fan of George and his work. He has niche down. George asks, I'd be curious how his database is set up for that many sites in one niche, and if he's utilizing WordPress multi-site to help with that scale. or what other tools are out there when you start getting into the 100, 200, 300 website scale?
Yeah. So we don't have, believe it or not, we're not managing like 300 websites. You would think so, right? Because it's like, whoa, you're making a lot of revenue. It's not the case. We just have clients that are paying us a little bit higher monthly retainers. So we probably manage less than 100 websites. I'd say between 80 and 100 different websites right now. And we don't use, everything that we do is WordPress. All of our sites are on WP Engine for the most part. But yeah, no, we basically, every single one of our clients has a staging environment, and they got the production environment, and we work on the staging environment. We push it to the production environment. Right. That's just kind of how we operate. I'm sure there are probably some, inefficiencies in that process that as we start to grow, we will solve, but it hasn't been a problem up until this point.
Do you only work with WordPress, Jason? Is that part of your requirements for clients that come on board?
So when we get a new client, the first thing that we do is we'll migrate them to WordPress, and we put them on a Genesis framework, and we have our own kind of like custom child themes that we have built. Right. So that is a part of it. And usually after we do that, we'll see like a lift as little as like 11% and as high as like 30% just by doing that. Because there's certain ways that we internally link pages. There's ways that we build our URL structure. There's ways that we look at our crawl depth, like all of this stuff, right? Which
is dependent upon a certain platform, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it comes back to what I said a moment ago about learning curves. Not interested in sitting here learning Squarespace or learning Magento or learning Drupal. I've made the decision, a long time ago. I only want to work with WordPress.
Yeah.
And I've had to say no to a few prospects that have said, no, we want to stay on, BigCommerce. Or saying, oh, no.
Oh yeah, we do the same. Yeah, we do the same, especially like a .NET website, ASP or something like that. Yeah. And so one of the things that we've done as far as efficiencies go, because you think we write a lot of content, we probably write over 2 million words of content every month. And so initially back in the day when there's 15 of us, we had like 3 developers that their whole job, you didn't even really want to call them developers because they were like underutilizing their skills, but they're publishing content on WordPress, right? Yeah, publishing, right? Yeah. And so we actually built it now so that we have scripts. So we've got some really cool scripts that we built. So scripts where we can actually publish like 200 pages like an hour. Like it just automatically publishes the content. Wow, we have scripts. We have scripts that run every like Saturday that go out and look at all of our clients' websites and puts together a report and it has like all of the external broken links, 301 redirects, all that stuff. And it crawls all of our clients' websites on Saturday, and then it puts together a report, but it also fixes it. It has decision trees. So it fixes the actual links, right? So we've got scripts that do a lot of automation, proprietary stuff.
Right. That's fascinating. And again, that would be, part of your process. Okay. We can't develop this software and provide this level of service if you're using some obscure content management system.
Exactly. Yep. So that's part of why we do it that way.
That's really interesting. Stephen asks, how do you make first contact with a prospective law firm? Email, phone call? I'm guessing, again, you've kind of already covered that because you're getting a lot of it is referral.
All of it is internal. Like every one of our business is internal, but sometimes like we have a business development manager, right? And so there's certain law firms out here that people know, right? Nationally. And so sometimes we'll like send out an email saying, hey, we do all the SEO for this firm. And that'll get them to open up the email, right? So we'll do some outreach like that, our business development manager that will basically open up some doors. Like, for example, one of our clients is the attorney that's representing George Floyd's family, right? So that's one of our clients. And so that's a case study of ours that we've built over the years.
Jason, do you guys use web templates? I'm guessing because you've built so many legal sites now that you would know this is the best structure and layout, calls to action. It all ties in with conversion tracking and everything else. This works. Bam, just install it. Do you guys
every one of our clients has this. Yeah, it has a different look and feel, but it follows the same kind of
framework. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you get any sort of pushback from clients? Oh, we want a bowl of fruit on the homepage and people holding hands and skipping down the beach.
Yeah,
Any
we
of that
tell
sort
them,
of
sure, we can do that, but the SEO is not going to work. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
you want a website that looks pretty that nobody comes to, or like, you know, you want to trust our system here, right?
Yeah.
You've hired us for a reason,
Yeah.
you know, and I think the client has to respect that, like, you know, from their provider. When you say no, like, this doesn't make sense. I know what you want, but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That's all the questions that I have, Jason. Again, I want to thank you for your time. Like, maybe just give everyone a brief. We probably should have touched on this at the beginning of the call, but
Sure.
let everyone know like where they can find you. I mean, I don't want you to get bombarded by SEO people looking for coaching, but maybe just tell people, you know, what you do and where you're at. And
yeah, absolutely. So, you know, Jason Hennessy, the agency is called Hennessy Digital. Just the past year, I actually acquired my last name, Hennessy, Hennessey. If you forget the E at the end, you're going to be buying cognac, right? And so, yeah, we have an agency. I'm based in California, but we've got people from all over the United States. We even got people in Eastern Europe that work with us. And if you want to get in touch with me, you could probably find me on Facebook, on Twitter. It's just at Jason Hennessy, or you can go to Hennessy.com.
that's your one-page website, right?
My one-page website.
I think there was mention of you're doing about 10 million in revenue at the moment.
Yeah, we just hit that milestone here. So
did you ever think it would get so big, man? I mean, I'm guessing, you know, before you went to that presentation that you held must have been such a pivotal moment.
Yeah, it was. You know, yeah, you don't think so. You know, and it just, you know, you're barely coming up for air, and just, you know, it just kind of it just grows organically, and I'm really excited because we're going to start to do more marketing. We're going to actually launch our website. We're going to do marketing. We're starting to do webinars, and so I think it's just going to kind of continue to get even stronger and stronger. So,
and I guess just before we wrap it up, how strongly would you encourage people to niche down? Because there's this real back and forth in the group now. People, you know, I've got members saying, don't want to niche down. I'm going to lose out. You know, I'm all in. I'm all in on niching down. I can see the benefits far outweigh the negatives.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think as your agency grows, like, you know, like we've niched down and it's been great, you know, but, you know, now our agency is at a point where we can maybe start to select different niches too, right? And start to niche down again. Because we've got enough support, enough resources, you know, to do so. But you gotta be able to kind of get to the point where you could be a little bit more selective in the niches that you take. But hey, that's been my story and it's worked. And it happened accidentally, but here we are. And now, you know, if you ask any attorney in the United States that, you know, knows anything about like digital marketing, in fact, I'm writing a book right now, and the book is like a real book that's going to get published, you know, and it's all about like SEO for lawyers, right? Like continuing to make myself the expert in that particular niche.
Right. Yeah, I'm totally on board with niching down. And because I haven't yet transitioned, I'm still in the process of transitioning. I have still a little bit of doubt or uncertainty there. Is this definitely the right thing to do? Am I going to restrict myself? But I'm going to push ahead with it because it's exhausting, man, picking up clients in different industries each and every time. I mean, you were doing the generalist stuff before you niched down, right? What was your experience then compared to now? I mean, must be night and day, surely.
It is, yeah. You know, a lot of the stuff I was doing was most of my own internal projects back then, because you'll always have those too, right? You know, even if you niche down, you're always going to have your own internal projects and stuff. But it's funny because now, like some of my niche, like my own internal projects, are building out like lead generation sites that you then lease out, like rank and rent websites.
Okay.
You know, we've got some of those too, where you build them out and it's your asset. You lease them out for. We've got one that's leased out for $15,000 a month. You know, you start to generate revenue that way too.
This has been really interesting and insightful, Jason. I just want to thank you for your time, man. I know it's probably right on dinner time there, so I'll let you get going. But um, I'd love to have you stick around in the group, bring the
Yeah, I'd love
SEO.
that. Thank you. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, again, man, can't thank you enough for doing this, and it's been fantastic. So thank you.